vibrated violently across the glass nightstand, skidding until it hit the edge with a sharp crack that snapped Seo Jinhwan awake mid-breath. 4:03 a.m. The room was dark, silent, wrapped in the kind of quiet that only came at the top of Manhattan skyscrapers, where the city noise never quite reached. Jinhwan sat up instantly, heart already pounding, instincts honed by decades of danger, screaming that nothing good ever arrived at this hour. The number on the screen was unfamiliar. He stared at it for half a second too long. Then he answered, "Seo Jinhwan." "Mr. Seo," a woman said, professional but strained. "This is Mount Grace Medical Center. Your wife—" His chest locked. "My wife?" His voice came out sharp, disbelieving. There was a pause, just long enough to confirm what his mind was already racing to understand. "Mrs. Amara Seo. She was admitted an hour ago. She's in active labor. There are complications. The baby's heart rate is dropping." The world tilted. "That's not possible," he said hoarsely, already swinging his legs out of bed. He stopped himself. 9 months. 9 months since she had walked out of his life. Divorce papers signed, silence swallowing everything they'd been. "She listed you as her emergency contact," the nurse continued. "She's asking for you." "Sir, are you still there?" "I'm coming," Jinhwan said, voice low and steady, despite the chaos detonating inside his chest. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. The call ended. He stood frozen for a fraction of a second, then moved like a man running from a fire. Clothes were dragged on without care, a suit jacket over a black t-shirt, shoes unlaced. He didn't bother checking his reflection. His hands shook as he grabbed his phone again, already dialing. "Kang," he snapped the second the line connected. "Car, now, hospital." "Yes, sir." Jinhwan was out the door before the call ended, the elevator ride down endless, every second slicing into him like a blade. A baby. Amara was pregnant. His baby. The memory of her face the day she left, tight with resolve, eyes glossy but unyielding, rose unbidden. "I can't live in your shadows anymore, Jin." He had tried to reach her. She had vanished. Lawyers had handled everything. He had convinced himself she was safer without him. And now she was in a hospital bed, crashing in labor, calling his name. The car screeched to a halt at the hospital entrance. Jinhwan didn't wait for the door to be opened properly. He was already out, moving fast, suit jacket flaring behind him like a shadow. Inside, fluorescent lights assaulted his eyes. The smell of antiseptic clawed at his throat. "I'm here," he said to the front desk, already scanning faces. "Amara Seo." The nurse didn't waste time. "This way!" They moved quickly, the hallway blurring, medical staff rushing past, voices overlapping. "Sir," the nurse said as they rounded a corner. "Your wife arrived alone. She was in distress. She's been very calm, but the baby? Is she conscious?" Jinhwan asked. "Yes." They stopped outside a double door. The nurse hesitated, then pushed it open. Amara lay on the bed, dark curls plastered to her forehead with sweat, her brown skin pale under the harsh lights. Her hands clenched the sheets, knuckles white, breathing shallow and controlled in a way that told him she was forcing herself not to scream. Her eyes snapped to the door, to him. For a moment, everything else disappeared. "Jin," she breathed, voice breaking. He crossed the room in 3 strides and took her hand, gripping it like it was the only solid thing left in the world. "I'm here," he said fiercely. "I've got you. I'm here." Her lips trembled. "I didn't know if you'd come." "I'm here," he repeated, softer now. "I'm not going anywhere." A contraction hit her hard. She cried out, fingers digging into his hand. Jinhwan didn't flinch. He leaned closer, forehead nearly touching hers. "Look at me," he murmured. "Breathe with me. Slow." "You always do that," she gasped, a pained laugh threading through her cry. "Act like you can control everything." "I can't control this," he said quietly, "but I can stay." The doctor entered, voice brisk. Mrs. Ayo, the baby's heart rate is still unstable. We're preparing for an emergency C-section. Amara's eyes widened, fear flashing raw and unfiltered. Emergency? Jinhwan felt something ancient and violent twist in his gut. Is she going to be okay? We're doing everything we can, the doctor said. But we need to move fast. Amara squeezed his hand. Jin, she whispered, if something... Don't, he said immediately, voice rough. Don't finish that sentence. You didn't even know, she said, tears spilling now. I'm sorry. I didn't tell you. I didn't know how. His jaw tightened. We'll talk later, he said, brushing his thumb over her knuckles. Right now, you focus on staying with me. That's all. They wheeled her toward the operating room. Jinhwan walked alongside, refusing to let go until the last possible second. I should have told you, she said breathlessly, as they stopped at the doors. I was scared. I didn't want you to feel trapped. He leaned down, pressing his forehead to hers. Amara, I would have burned my entire world down to protect you. Her eyes searched his face. You already would have. The door swung open. A nurse gently pried his hand from hers. We'll take it from here, sir. Jinhwan stood there as she disappeared behind the doors, the weight of everything he didn't know crushing into him all at once. A baby, his child, growing for 9 months without him. He dragged a hand down his face and turned away, pacing the sterile waiting room like a caged animal. Minutes crawled. Every second felt like an hour. Kang arrived, standing a careful distance away. Sir, Jinhwan didn't look at him. She was pregnant. Yes, Kang said quietly. We've confirmed. 8.5 months, approximately. You knew? Jinhwan snapped, whirling. No, Kang said firmly. We didn't. She was very careful. Jinhwan swallowed hard and dropped into a chair, elbows on his knees, head bowed. For the first time in years, the weight of his choices pressed down without armor, without power to deflect it. He had lost her once. He might lose her again. The doors finally opened. A nurse stepped out, eyes soft but alert. Mr. Seo? He stood so fast the chair scraped loudly behind him. Yes, the baby is stable for now, but we need you to know this is still critical. Your wife is asking for you. He didn't wait for permission. Inside, the room buzzed with controlled urgency. Machines beeped. Amara lay on the table now, prepped, eyes glassy but sharp when she saw him. You look terrible, she said weakly. He huffed a breath that might have been a laugh if it didn't break halfway through. You always did say honesty was important. Jin, she said softly, I need you to hear me. I'm listening. If anything happens, she said, voice trembling, promise me you won't disappear. Promise me our child will know you. His chest ached. Nothing is happening to you, he said, but I promise, I swear it. Her eyes closed as another contraction tore through her. You always swear like it's a blood oath. It is? They rolled her toward surgery. Jinhwan stood at the threshold, watching, helpless, every regret he had buried clawing its way back to the surface. 9 months ago, he had signed papers and convinced himself letting her go was love. Now, as the doors closed and alarms spiked, he realized the truth too late. Letting her go had been fear, and fear had almost cost him everything. The doors sealed with a muted hiss, cutting Jinhwan off from the sight of Amara's face, from the sound of her breathing, from the fragile thread that seemed to be holding his world together. The red indicator above the operating room lit up, and suddenly there was nothing left for him to do but wait. He hated waiting. He paced the length of the corridor, hands flexing and unclenching at his sides. The hospital hallway felt too narrow, the air too clean, too thin. Every beat from behind the doors struck his nerves like a warning shot. His mind, trained for negotiations and hostile takeovers, searched desperately for something to control, and found nothing. 9 months. 9 months ago, Amara had stood in his penthouse living room, sunlight cutting across her face, her suitcase by the door. She hadn't cried then. That was what had frightened him most. "I love you," she'd said, quietly, voice steady in a way that felt final. "But I won't lose myself to your world." "You knew who I was when you married me," he'd replied, too sharp, too defensive. "And I believed you when you said I mattered more than that world," she had said. "I was wrong." The memory tightened his chest until it hurt to breathe. A nurse brushed past him, pulling him back to the present. He stopped pacing and leaned against the wall, scrubbing a hand over his face. His phone vibrated in his pocket. He ignored it at first, then glanced down. 5 missed calls, messages stacking up, board members, executives, people who expected answers at all hours. For the first time in decades, Seo Jin-hwan turned the phone off completely. Kang approached cautiously. "Sir, you should sit." "I'm fine." "You're not," Kang said, not unkindly. "Neither is she." Jin-hwan shot him a look, but there was no real anger in it, just fear, naked and unguarded. "Why didn't she tell me?" Kang hesitated. "With respect, sir. Would you have let her leave if you'd known?" The question landed like a blow. Jin-hwan opened his mouth, then closed it again. Images flashed through his mind. Security details doubled, movement restricted. Amara watched constantly in the name of protection. A pregnancy would have made her a target. His enemies would have smelled blood. "No," he admitted hoarsely. "I wouldn't have." Kang nodded slowly. "Then perhaps she knew exactly what she was doing." The words stung because they were true. Jin-hwan slid down into the chair again, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. "She always said I confuse control with care. And you always said the world is dangerous," Kang replied. "You were both right." Time stretched, minutes dragged into something heavier, denser. Every so often a nurse stepped in or out, speaking in low voices. Jin-hwan tried to read their expressions, tried to find meaning in the way they moved. He was used to reading people, to spotting weakness and deception. Here everyone looked the same, focused, efficient, impossible to decipher. Another memory surfaced, uninvited. Amara in the kitchen, barefoot, laughing as she tried to teach him how to season collard greens properly. "No, Jin, you can't just measure everything with your eyes," she'd teased. "Some things you feel." "I don't trust feelings," he'd replied. She had smiled sadly. "That's why you scare me sometimes." The indicator light flickered. Jinwan's heart slammed against his ribs as a doctor emerged, mask pulled down, eyes serious. "Mr. Seo." He was on his feet instantly. "How is she?" The doctor exhaled slowly. "The baby's heart rate stabilized after delivery. Your daughter is in the NICU for observation." "Daughter," Jinwan repeated, the word foreign and overwhelming on his tongue. "And my wife?" he asked. The doctor held his gaze. "She lost a lot of blood. We've managed to stop the hemorrhaging, but she's still under anesthesia. The next few hours are critical." Jinwan's knees weakened. He gripped the back of the chair to steady himself. "Can I see her?" "In a little while," the doctor said. "We'll move her to recovery first." "And the baby?" "She's small, but she's fighting," the doctor said, allowing a faint smile. "Much like her mother, I imagine." Something inside Jinwan cracked. He bowed his head, breath hitching, a sound escaping him that he didn't recognize as his own. "Thank you," he said, voice rough. When the doctor left, Kang placed a hand on his shoulder. Jinwan didn't shrug it off. "I have a daughter," Jinwan murmured, staring at nothing. "Yes, sir." He closed his eyes, overwhelmed by an emotion too vast to name. Fear, awe, regret, wonder, all tangled together. Hours later, they finally let him into recovery. Amara lay pale against white sheets, an IV in her arm, monitors blinking steadily beside her. Her chest rose and fell, slow and shallow. The sight of her like this, fragile, wounded, hit him harder than any threat ever had. He pulled a chair close and sat, taking her hand carefully, as if afraid she might break. "I'm here," he whispered, even though she couldn't hear him. "I should have been here the whole time." Her fingers twitched faintly, and his breath caught. "You did this alone," he murmured, thumb brushing over her skin. You carried our child alone. I thought letting you go was protecting you. I was wrong." Her lashes fluttered. Slowly, her eyes opened. "Jin?" Her voice was hoarse, barely there. "I'm here," he said immediately, leaning forward. "You're safe. The baby. She's alive. She's stable." Tears welled in Amara's eyes. "She cried?" "Yes," he said, smiling through his own tears. "She cried like she was angry at the world." Amara let out a weak laugh that turned into a sob. "That sounds about right." He squeezed her hand gently. "I'm so sorry." She turned her head slightly to look at him. "For what?" "For not being someone you felt you could trust with this," he said. "For making you feel like you had to choose between me and yourself." Her gaze searched his face, tired but sharp. "I didn't leave because I stopped loving you," she said softly. "I left because I was disappearing." "I know," he said, swallowing hard. "I see that now." Silence stretched between them, heavy but not hostile. "She's beautiful," Amara whispered. "I saw her for a second before they took her." "What's her name?" he asked. Amara hesitated. I hadn't decided. I didn't want to choose without you." His chest tightened. "Then we'll choose together." She studied him, eyes glistening. "You mean that?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "Whatever you decide, I'm not here to take over. I'm here to stay, if you'll let me." Amara closed her eyes, a tear sliding down her temple. "You don't get to fix everything just by showing up at the worst moment," she said quietly. "I know," he replied, "but I'm willing to do the work. For you. For her." She looked at him again, and this time there was something different in her expression. Not forgiveness, not yet, but consideration. "You always want to move fast," she murmured. "This isn't a merger, Jin." "I know," he said softly. "This is bigger." A nurse appeared at the door. "Mr. CO, we can take you to see your daughter now." Amara's hand tightened around his. "Go," she said. "You should see her." He hesitated. "I don't want to leave you." "I'll be here," she said. "For once, let yourself have something good." He nodded, standing reluctantly, and bent to press a careful kiss to her forehead. "I'll be right back." The NICU was quiet, almost reverent. Rows of incubators glowed softly. The nurse stopped beside one and gestured. "There she is." Jinhwan stepped closer, breath catching painfully in his throat. She was tiny, swaddled, her skin a warm brown like Amara's, her features delicate, her fists clenched as if already ready to fight. That's her," he whispered. "Yes," the nurse smiled. "She's strong." Jinhwan's vision blurred. He reached out, finger brushing the glass. "I'm your father," he murmured, voice breaking. "I'm sorry. I'm late." He stood there for a long time, memorizing every detail, every breath. For the first time in his life, the future terrified him, more than any enemy ever had. And for the first time, he wanted it anyway. Jinhwan left the NICU reluctantly, his steps slower now, heavier, as if the knowledge of his daughter's existence had shifted the gravity of the entire world. The corridors felt different on the way back, less sterile, more real. Every sound seemed louder, every emotion closer to the surface. He paused outside Amara's room, inhaled once, steadying himself, then pushed the door open. She was awake, eyes half-lidded, staring at the ceiling as if counting invisible cracks. When she heard him, her gaze slid toward the door. "You saw her," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. "Yes," he replied, pulling the chair back to her bedside again. "She's beautiful. She has your mouth." Amara huffed a weak breath. "Poor thing." He smiled, then it faded. "She's stronger than she looks." "So am I," Amara said softly, though exhaustion weighed every word. He nodded. "I know." For a while they sat in silence, the machines filling the space between them with soft beeps and rhythmic hums. Outside the room, life went on, nurses walking past, footsteps echoing faintly. But inside, everything felt suspended. "Why now?" Amara asked suddenly, eyes still on the ceiling. Why did you come so fast? The question cut deeper than she probably intended. Because I still love you, he said without hesitation. Because the idea of losing you, of losing both of you. His voice broke and he stopped, jaw tightening. Because I couldn't breathe when they said your name. She turned her head to look at him. Love isn't enough, Jen. I know, he said. It never was. I treated it like it was something I could lock away and protect with force. I didn't realize I was suffocating you. Amara swallowed. You live in a world where people disappear, where mistakes get people killed. I woke up every day wondering if that would be the day someone used me to hurt you. And now? He asked quietly. Now I'm wondering if bringing a child into that world was selfish, she admitted, tears pooling at the corners of her eyes. I wondered that every night. Jinwan leaned forward. You didn't, he said firmly. You gave her life. You gave her love. I failed to give you peace. Her lips trembled. You don't get to carry all of it. I chose to leave. I chose to do this alone. Because I made you feel like you had no other choice, he countered. She exhaled slowly. Maybe, or maybe I was finally brave enough to choose myself. He nodded once. That's fair. Another silence fell, heavier but honest. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd try to fix it, Amara continued. You always fix things by taking control. I didn't want my pregnancy managed like a hostile acquisition. He winced. I deserved that. A faint smile ghosted across her lips. You always do. He let out a breath, some of the tension easing. I stepped down, he said quietly. Her eyes widened slightly. From what? From everything that mattered, he replied. The board, the day-to-day control. I still own the company, but I'm not running it anymore. She stared at him, disbelief flickering across her face. You're lying. I'm not, he said calmly. I did it 3 months ago. Why? She whispered. Because I realized power doesn't mean anything if I don't have anyone to come home to, he said. And because if I ever hoped to be someone you could trust again, I had to start proving it before you ever asked. Her throat bobbed. You didn't have to do that. I did, he said. For myself. She studied him, searching for the familiar arrogance, the sharp edges. What she saw instead unsettled her more, the quiet resolve, the absence of his usual armor. I don't know what this means, she said finally. It doesn't have to mean anything right now, he replied. We take this one step at a time, on your terms. Her eyes softened, but caution remained. You say that now. I'll say it tomorrow, he said, and the day after that. A nurse knocked lightly and entered. Mrs. Seo, we're going to bring the baby in for a few minutes. Amara's breath hitched. Already? Yes, the nurse smiled. She's stable enough for a short visit. Jinwan stood instinctively, heart hammering again. The nurse returned moments later, gently wheeling in a bassinet. The tiny bundle inside stirred, making a soft, almost indignant sound. Amara's eyes filled instantly. Oh my God, she whispered. Hi, baby. Jinwan watched her, something fierce and tender igniting in his chest as she reached out, fingers trembling, touching their daughter's cheek. The baby quieted, tiny mouth opening as if searching for something familiar. She knows you, Jinwan said softly. Amara nodded, tears spilling freely now. I talked to her every night, told her stories, told her about the man I loved once. He swallowed. What did you tell her about me? That you were complicated, Amara said, voice shaking. That you were brilliant and stubborn and kind in ways you didn't even understand. That you loved deeply, even when you were afraid. His eyes burned. I wish you'd let me love you better. She looked up at him. You can't love someone better by controlling them. I know, he said. I'm learning. The nurse stepped back, giving them space. Jinwan moved closer, careful, reverent. Can I? He asked, gesturing. Amara hesitated for only a second before nodding. Yes. He slid his hands under their daughter, lifting her with surprising gentleness. She weighed almost nothing, warm and fragile against his chest. The moment she settled, something in him shattered completely. "I missed so much," he whispered, voice thick. "I missed all of you." Amara watched him, emotions warring across her face. "You didn't know." "I should have," he replied. "I should have been someone you trusted enough to tell." The baby squirmed, letting out a small cry. Jinwan froze. "I'm doing this wrong." Amara gave a weak laugh. "You're doing fine. She's just dramatic." "That's your fault," he murmured to the baby, then glanced at Amara. "She gets that from you." She rolled her eyes. "She gets it from both of us." When the nurse returned to take the baby back, Jinwan felt a sharp pang of loss he hadn't expected. He watched until the bassinet disappeared, then turned back to Amara. "Stay," she said suddenly. He didn't hesitate. "I'm not going anywhere." "Not just tonight," she clarified. "I mean, be here, be present. No disappearing when things get hard." "I can't promise perfection," he said carefully, "but I can promise honesty." She nodded slowly. "That's a start." He sat back down, exhaustion finally catching up to him. Outside the window, the sky was beginning to lighten, dawn creeping in soft and pale. "You know," Amara said quietly, "I spent months convincing myself you wouldn't want this, that you'd see a baby as a weakness." He shook his head. "She's not a weakness," he said. "She's the strongest thing that's ever happened to me." Amara closed her eyes, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. "Get some rest," he said gently. "I'll be right here when you wake up." She didn't argue. Her breathing slowed, sleep pulling her under. Jinhuan sat there watching her and thinking about everything that lay ahead, the conversations they still needed to have, the trust that needed rebuilding, the dangers he would have to confront without dragging them into it. For the first time, he didn't feel powerful. He felt responsible. And somehow that felt far more terrifying and far more right than anything he had ever known. Morning bled slowly into the hospital room, pale light filtering through the blinds and settling across Amara's face. Jinwan had not moved from the chair. He hadn't slept. Every time her breathing hitched or her brow tightened, he straightened, alert, heart racing like a siren had gone off inside his chest. She stirred just after sunrise. "Why are you staring at me like that?" Amara murmured, voice thick with sleep. He exhaled, something like a laugh slipping out. "I was making sure you were still here." She opened her eyes fully and met his gaze. "I'm not that easy to get rid of." "I'm starting to realize that," he said softly. A nurse entered to check her vitals, efficient and gentle. Jinhuan stepped back instinctively, watching every movement, every reading on the monitor. When the nurse finished and smiled reassuringly, a fraction of the tension eased from his shoulders. "She's a fighter," the nurse said. "Both of you are." When they were alone again, Amara shifted slightly, wincing. "How long did you stay?" "All night," he answered. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to." She studied him carefully. "Old you would have left to handle business." He didn't look away. "Old me would have thought that was responsible. And now? Now I think responsibility is staying," he said, "even when I'm afraid." Her lips pressed together, emotions flickering across her face. "You were always afraid," she said quietly. "You just hid it behind money and muscle." He nodded once. "I know." There was a knock at the door before either of them could say more. Kang stepped in, followed by another man Amara recognized immediately. Attorney Marcus Hale, Jinwan's longtime legal counsel. Her jaw tightened. "Why is your lawyer here?" Jinwan turned to her. "Because there are things we need to talk about, and I won't do it behind your back." Marcus inclined his head politely. "Mrs. Seo." "I'm not." She stopped herself, then sighed. "Not anymore." Jinhuan stiffened, but said nothing. Marcus clasped his hands. "Mr. Seo wanted to make sure you're aware of the steps he's taken over the last several months." Amara's eyes narrowed. "What steps?" Jinwan gestured for Marcus to speak. "The trusts have been restructured." Marcus said calmly. Assets isolated, no operational ties to the subsidiaries under investigation, and most importantly, provisions have been put in place to protect dependents. Amara's breath caught. Dependents? The baby, Marcus clarified gently. And you. Her gaze snapped back to Jinwan. You planned this? I prepared, he corrected, in case I ever needed to make choices fast. You mean in case someone tried to hurt us, she said flatly. Yes, he replied without evasion. Silence thickened the room. I didn't want this, Amara said finally, voice low. I didn't want my child growing up surrounded by walls and guards and fear. She won't, Jinwan said immediately. I won't allow it. You don't get to decide that alone, she shot back. I know, he said, hands open. That's why I'm telling you now. That's why he's here. Nothing moves forward without your consent. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. I can step outside if... No, Amara said. Stay. She took a slow breath, gathering herself. What about the threats that made me leave in the first place? She asked Jinwan. The things you never told me? His jaw tightened. They're gone. She laughed sharply. People like you don't just make enemies disappear. I didn't make them disappear, he said. I dismantled them. Quietly, legally, financially. And the ones who can't be dismantled, she pressed. He met her gaze steadily. I stepped out of their line of sight. Kang spoke for the first time. Mr. Seo relocated key operations overseas. He no longer attends the meetings that draw attention. Amara shook her head slowly. You did all this without telling me. I wasn't doing it to win you back, Jinwan said. I was doing it because I finally understood what it costs to keep living the way I was. She closed her eyes, exhaustion washing over her. I needed you to choose me, she whispered. Not in theory, in action. I'm choosing you now, he said. Every day, if you'll let me. A tear slipped down her cheek. It might be too late for us. The words cut deep, but he didn't argue. Then let me be a good father, he said quietly, even if that's all I get. She looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time since he'd arrived, she saw fear in his eyes, not of losing power, but of losing connection. The door opened again, interrupting the moment. A nurse wheeled in the bassinet. She's awake, the nurse said with a smile. Thought you might like some time. Amara's face softened instantly. Bring her here! Jinwan stood back as Amara cradled their daughter, the baby's tiny fingers curling around Amara's hospital gown. The room felt warmer, fuller, like the air itself had changed. She needs a name, Amara murmured. Yes, Jinwan said. She does. Amara hesitated. I was thinking. Naya. He repeated it softly. Naya. It means purpose, she said. I wanted her to know she wasn't an accident. She was chosen. Jinwan nodded, throat tight. It's perfect. Amara glanced up at him. You don't have to agree just because... I'm not, he said. I love it. Nia let out a small sound, eyes fluttering open briefly. Jinwan felt his heart stumble. She looks like she's judging me already, he murmured. Amara smiled despite herself. Get used to it. They fell quiet, watching her sleep. Then Amara spoke again, voice steadier now. If you're in her life, it will be on my terms. He nodded immediately. Tell me what they are. No secrets, she said. No disappearing acts. No decisions that affect her without me. Agreed. And if I ever feel like we're not safe, she continued, I leave. No arguments. His chest tightened, but he nodded. Agreed. And one more thing, she said, meeting his eyes. You don't get to buy your way into her heart. A faint smile touched his lips. I wouldn't dare. The door closed quietly behind Marcus and Kang as they excused themselves, leaving the three of them alone. You're different, Amara said after a while. I had 9 months to think, he replied. Turns out silence is brutal. She shifted, wincing slightly. I thought about you every day. So did I, he admitted, Her eyes searched his face. "And you didn't come." "I was afraid," he said simply, "that you'd tell me you were happier without me." She laughed softly, bittersweet. "I wasn't happier. I was just safer." "That hurts," he said. "It should," she replied. "But it doesn't mean I don't still care." Hope flickered cautiously in his chest, fragile and dangerous. Outside, the city continued its relentless pace. Inside the room, something quieter, more delicate was being built, slowly, painfully, honestly. Jinhwan watched Amara cradle their daughter, the weight of everything he had almost lost pressing down on him. This wasn't a negotiation, it was a reckoning. And for the first time in his life, Seo Jinhwan was willing to lose everything else to get this right. The days that followed moved differently, as if time itself had softened its edges. Jinhwan measured everything now in heartbeats and hospital shifts, in the rise and fall of Amara's chest, in the tiny fingers of his daughter curling and uncurling, as if she were already learning how to hold on. Nia improved steadily. The doctors said it, cautiously, never promising too much, but every hour without alarms felt like a gift. Jinhwan learned the sounds of the NICU, learned how to stand without hovering, how to speak in a low voice, even when his chest felt too full to contain what he felt. He learned how to sit beside Amara's bed without trying to fix her pain, how to listen when she spoke in fragments, when exhaustion stole the sharpness from her words. On the fourth morning, Amara was allowed to walk the short distance to the NICU. She leaned heavily on the walker, her face tight with discomfort, but her eyes were fixed on the hallway ahead. "I can do this," she insisted when Jinhwan reached for her elbow. "I know," he said, holding back anyway, close enough that she could take his arm if she needed it. She glanced at him. "You don't trust easily." "No," he admitted, "but I'm trying." She scoffed quietly. "Story of your life." They stood side by side at the incubator, looking down at their daughter. Nia's eyes fluttered open, unfocused, her tiny mouth puckering as if she were offended by the light. Amara laughed softly. "She makes that face when she's annoyed." "She's only 4 days old," Jinhwan said. "She's my child," Amara replied. "Of course she's dramatic." He smiled, and this time it came easily. Later that afternoon, when Amara was resting, Jinhwan stepped out to take a call he'd been putting off for days. He stood by the large window at the end of the corridor, city sprawling beneath him. "Yes," he said into the phone. "No, that won't be happening." A pause. "I understand the implications," he continued calmly. "I'm telling you, my decision stands." Another pause, longer this time. "Then dissolve the partnership," he said. "Sell my shares if you have to." He ended the call without waiting for a response. When he returned to Amara's room, she was watching him closely. "You're doing that thing where you pretend nothing happened." He hesitated, then sighed. "I walked away from a deal worth more than this hospital." She blinked. "Why?" "Because they wouldn't agree to my terms," he said. "No political ties, no backroom leverage, no future obligations that could reach you or Nia." Amara stared at him. "You didn't tell me you were negotiating again." "I wasn't," he replied. "I was ending it." Her expression softened, then hardened again just as quickly. "You don't have to burn down your life to prove anything to me." "I know," he said, "but I'm not doing this to prove anything. I'm doing it because I finally know what matters." She studied him for a long moment. "You're changing." "I have to," he said, "or I lose her. And I lose you. Completely." She looked away, emotion flickering across her face. "You don't get guarantees." "I know," he said. "I'll take uncertainty over emptiness. Any day." The day Amara was discharged, the sky was clear and bright, the city loud and indifferent as ever. Jinhwan watched as she carefully settled into the back seat of the car, Nikia strapped securely in her carrier. "You don't have to come with us," Amara said quietly. "I can manage." "I know you can," he replied, "but I'd like to." She hesitated, then nodded once. For now. The apartment she had chosen was nothing like the penthouse they once shared. It was smaller, warmer, filled with light and plants and the quiet evidence of a life she had built on her own. Jinwan stood in the doorway, suddenly unsure of himself. "This is where I live," Amara said. "No guards, no security teams." He nodded. "I won't bring any." She turned to face him. "If that changes, you tell me." "I promise." The first night was awkward. Jinwan slept on the couch staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the apartment, pipes shifting, the distant hum of traffic, the soft cry of his daughter at 2 in the morning. He was up before Amara reached the nursery, already warming a bottle with clumsy care. She stopped short in the doorway, watching him sway gently as he fed Naya, murmuring to her under his breath. "What are you saying to her?" Amara asked. He glanced up, embarrassed. "Apologizing." "For what?" "For being late," he said. "For not knowing how to do this yet. For loving her so much it scares me." Amara's eyes filled. She crossed the room and rested a hand on his shoulder. "She's not keeping score," she whispered. "I am," he said. Weeks passed. Routine settled in slowly, unevenly. There were arguments about boundaries, about schedules, about trust. There were nights Amara woke from bad dreams, memories of fear clawing their way back. There were moments Jinwan almost reverted to old instincts, only to stop himself at the last second. And there were moments that felt impossibly right. Naya's first real smile, gummy and unfocused. Amara falling asleep on the couch with the baby on her chest, Jinwan covering them both with a blanket. Shared laughter over burnt dinners and spilled milk. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Amara stood by the window watching Jinwan on the floor with Nia, making ridiculous faces. "You know," she said slowly, "I never stopped loving you." He froze, then looked up. "Amara, I didn't say I trust you completely," she continued. "I didn't say I'm ready to be your wife again, but I see you trying, every day." He rose slowly, careful not to startle her. "That's all I can do." She nodded. "For now, that might be enough." He swallowed, hope and fear tangling in his chest. "I won't rush you." "I know," she said, "and that's new." They stood there, close but not touching, the weight of their past still present, but no longer crushing. Months later, on a quiet morning, Jinwan woke to the sound of Nia laughing in the next room. He smiled to himself, a sound that would have once felt foreign now feeling like home. He joined them, sitting on the floor as Amara handed him their daughter without hesitation. "Good morning," Amara said. "Good morning," he replied. Nia babbled happily, gripping his finger with surprising strength. Jinwan looked at her, then at Amara. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" "For giving me the chance to earn this," he said. Amara watched him for a long moment, then nodded. "Don't waste it." He wouldn't, because power had once defined him. But love, earned slowly, painfully, honestly, had finally taught him how to live.